Uzbekistan is a multi-ethnic country. Representatives of more than 130 different ethnic groups live on its territory. Such a situation began to form in the Middle Ages, in the heyday of the Great Silk Road. Caravans flocked to large cities located on this historical route from all parts of the world, and along with goods, they brought here elements of their cultures, traditions, and customs. Religion was no exception. To this day, many religions coexist peacefully in Uzbekistan. This is evidenced by the temples of various religions, often erected several centuries ago. The Mausoleum of Ismail Samani is a landmark building. In a way, it embodies the tolerance of the Uzbek people. It is an architectural monument of ancient times, which combines the traditions of several religions at once.
It
is really a masterpiece in the pearl of Central Asian architecture, and it is treated in a special way. There is a lot of research about it by such figures as Shishkin, Vyatkin, and the architect Zasypkin, dated to the first years of the Soviet power. Thanks to Zasypkin, by the way, the architectural monument, the Mausoleum of Ismail Samani, undergone a very scientifically correct restoration. This mausoleum, according to legend, was built by the founder of the Samanid state, Ismail Samani, for his father Ahmad ibn Asad. Later, the place became the family tomb of the dynasty. Ismail himself was buried in it, and then, according to the inscriptions above the entrance, his grandson too. The time of construction, according to scientists, falls in the period between 892 and 943 of our era.
Как мы видим, здесь использован только кирпич и только алебастр. Здесь декор состоит из 18 видов кладки.
Only brick and alabaster are used here. Here the decor consists of 18 types of masonry. This is a unique work of masters of those times, which demonstrated a great knowledge of architecture, knowledge of mathematics, knowledge of physics and optical physics. And as we see, these are 4 walls in the form of a cube, and on top there is a sphere in the form of a dome, which means that the 4 walls are our world. This is the earth. This vault above the earth is the universe.
Что 4 стены – это наш мир. Это Земля, и вот это свод над Землей, которая Вселенная.
Numerous studies suggest that the Samani Mausoleum is one of the first structures on the territory of modern Uzbekistan, during the construction of which burnt brick was used. Being in essence a model of Islamic architecture, it concludes in its appearance many cultural traditions typical for other religions. Until today, architects argue about the ethnogenesis of this monument. Some call it the Temple of the Sun, others call it the Buddhist mandala, while others call it Sabé, which is associated with the stars and the moon. Architectural traditions of the pre-Islamic period is seen in the appearance of the Mausoleum of Ismail Samani, when Zoroastrianism was the most widespread religion in the region. The written sources confirm this. The Samanids, being the distributors of the new faith, also revived those customs that did not contradict its dogmas.
Здесь есть зороастрийские знаки, здесь есть доисламские знаки. Это говорит о том,
There are Zoroastrian signs, pre-Islamic signs. This suggests that under the rule of Ismail Samani, even if 90% of the population of Bukhara obeyed Islamic laws, they still observed Islamic traditions. Somewhere deep inside in their hearts, they had Zoroastrian beliefs. They still believed in Zoroastrianism. Therefore, they used these signs as a decoration, not as faith, but as a decoration.
Украшения, не как вера, а как украшение, как вот декор. Здесь использовали вот эти знаки.
Experts also find Christian traditions in the design of the mausoleum, for example, the Nestorian cross. the image of which is repeatedly found in the decoration of the building. Many other details allow us to conclude that this is far from an accidental coincidence.
И все вот элементы, вот эти вот, так сказать, христианство, несторианство и иудеи есть здесь.
All the elements of Christianity, Nestorianism, Judaism are here. You can notice it. The 10 Commandments of Moses are in these cells. Look, 10. There is still a digital meaning of Zoroastrianism, such as Kabbalah or Abjad as we know it. This is all upstairs. 43 round-shaped things. 43 is a symbol of death in Zoroastrianism.
43 вот таких вот кругляшек вон. Это символ 43, символ смерти у зороастризма.
The mausoleum of the Samanids is the oldest monument of Islamic architecture in Central Asia. It has been preserved in its original form largely due to several generations of Bukhara residents.
Why,
when in 1220 Genghis Khan conquered Bukhara, he destroyed everything that caught his eye, but did not touch such a unique building, which was then 250-300 years old. Why didn't he destroy it? People say that the Bukhara people did not want it to be destroyed, and they brought sand to this place here from the desert, and they just covered it with sand. When Genghis Khan conquered Bukhara, instead of this building, he saw a huge sand dune.
Когда Чингисхан завоевал Бухару, он вместо этого здания увидел огромный бархан из песка.
The architectural features of the mausoleum are striking at first sight. This is a carefully designed building in which all proportions are observed, and the artwork gives a small structure a sense of a certain monumentalism.
Кладка этого кирпича.
The masonry of this brick is so elegantly built that it makes it airy, despite the wall thickness, which is almost 2 meters. 10 meters high plus a dome of 5 meters, and it looks like a work of art. When architects from all over the world were here, young architects came to the Samanid mausoleum. They said that a person could not erect such a work of art, such an architecture. Only divine condescension came upon him, and he was able to build it. This is just a miracle of the world, one might say.
Ну, просто чудо света, можно сказать.
Hushi especially came from China to study the monuments of ancient architecture of Uzbekistan. The sight of the Samani Mausoleum also prompted him to think about a synthesis of architectural traditions of different cultures. If you compare this building with Chinese temples where everything is more expanded with vivid design inside, this mausoleum is a bit like a Chinese building, but to a greater extent. Nevertheless, it resembles Indian architecture. In China, in religious buildings, much more attention is paid to the praise of God. Another sacred place of Bukhara, attracting tourists from all over the world, is located in the so-called Mahala, an authentic quarter, the architecture of which has not undergone significant changes over many centuries. A Jewish temple has been here for several centuries. This is one of the oldest synagogues in Central Asia. This synagogue is 420 years old. This is a monument of the 16th century protected by the state and the International Organization of UNESCO. Today, about 500 people, Bukhara Jews, live in Bukhara. The Bukhara synagogue was built at the same time as another architectural monument of the city, the Labi Haus ensemble, which is several tens of meters from it. It's known that this coincidence is not accidental. The fact is that this ensemble was built by Nadir Divan Begi, one of the richest people of that time.
водоема раньше, вот который сейчас хаус.
Instead of a pond before where Haus is now, there were residential buildings. One lonely Jewish woman of Bukhara, unfortunately we do not remember her name, said, "I won't leave anywhere." Then Nadir Divan Begi himself came to this woman. He came and asked her, "Why do you not accept our conditions?" She said, "Jews do not have a synagogue." Indeed, they did not have a synagogue before. They prayed together with the Muslims. "If you build a synagogue," she said, "I would go live there." No sooner said than done. He promised and he laid the foundation of the synagogue and the Labi Haus ensemble.
Вот этой синагоги и вот этого ансамбля Леби Хаус. Именем этого человека названа синагога наша.
The main hall of the synagogue is the oldest part of the building, called the Mullah Mani. This man was in charge of the temple almost 100 years ago. In 1940, the house of worship was closed by the Soviet government, but 5 years later it was returned to the religious community.
Это каркасное здание. Здесь нет
This is a
фундамента.
frame building. There is no foundation, concrete slabs. There is no reinforcement. It is held on boards, brick and mortar. This is all we have saved. Imagine how many earthquakes we had, how many buildings we had destroyed. The synagogue stands still, although it is framed. This proves once again that the house of God is guarded by the God himself. Here are the Torah scrolls in this closet. This is the oldest Torah.
Находятся свитки Торы. Это древнейшая Тора.
One of the most valuable treasures of the Bukhara synagogue are the ancient scrolls of the Torah, the scripture of the Jewish religion. Two of them, according to legend, are more than 1,000 years old. This Torah describes how the Lord God created the world in 6 days, how the first people, Adam and Eve, were created. It talks about our 3 forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the 4 foremothers, and describes the laws according to which all Jews live. Many famous people come to see the scrolls of the Torah, in particularly Hillary Clinton, Madeleine Albright, German President Walter Steinmeier. The Cathedral of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in Tashkent is rightfully considered one of the most notable buildings in the capital. Often it is called the Polish Catholic Church. The reasons for this go down in history to more than a century ago.
Было время, когда в Ташкенте половину населения католики составляли.
There was a time when Catholics made up half of the population in Tashkent, European population. How did it happen? The Poles rebelled against Imperial Russia. Even loyal people of a high rank, officials, engineers, and generals, they tried to keep Poles away from their homeland so that they would work somewhere in the Far East, Central Asia, and the Caucasus. And so it happened that there was a time when there were as many as 40 generals of Polish descent on the territory of Turkestan, and they were Catholics. While as worshippers, they also needed to fulfill the requirements of their faith, as they say, confirmation, birth, death, and there was almost no Catholic priesthood here.
Конфирмация, рождение, смерти. А католического священства здесь почти не было.
Money for the construction of the temple was collected quite quickly, after which the consent of the authorities on the construction of the church was required. Letters were written to the leadership of the Turkestan territory, to the Emperor Nicholas II, to the Holy Synod of the Russian Orthodox Church. By 1912, permission was obtained, and Justin Bonaventura Pranaitis, personal representative of the Pope in Turkestan, took up the project.
И в 1912 году этот священник Бонавентура Пранайтис, который был с Прибалтики и который...
In 1912, this priest, Bonaventura Pranaitis, who was from the Baltic states, who was the curator of Catholics in Turkestan, bought this plot of land and the construction of this temple began. He had an idea for the facade of this temple to represent the suffering of Jesus Christ. Here below was Jesus, who was tied in a crown of thorns, and above there were to be 3 crosses, Jesus Christ and 2 others who were crucified on each side.
3 креста Иисуса Христа и 2 других, которые были распяты по бокам.
The project was developed by the famous Polish architect Ludwik Panczakewicz, who by then had already built the majestic Cathedral of Saints Michael and Florian in Warsaw. Catholic workers of Turkestan were involved as workers.
Строительство было такое пионерское.
This construction was pioneer. The fact is that the chosen system for construction was not of kızılkaya, brown yellow bricks, but of cement blocks, concrete cement. This was the first time block construction appeared here in Turkestan, and this construction went very slowly because there were few working hands. Tashkent was always under construction intensively, especially at that time.
Всегда очень интенсивно, и особенно в это время.
2 years after the start of construction, the First World War began, and soon in Tashkent, Samarkand and Fergana, there was a huge number of prisoners of war of the Austro-Hungarian army, about 180,000 people. Many of them were Catholics.
Они участвовали в строительстве.
They participated in the construction, and since it turned out to be a lot of labor, naturally the cathedral began to grow rapidly, and by the beginning of 1917 it was ready. Only its crypt, that is, the lower part, was consecrated. And then revolutionary events began, which of course closed the church. The Bolsheviks closed it, and in general it stood in such a ruin. It was gradually looted. By 1925, the building was nationalized by the Soviet government. The unique decorative sculptures that adorned the church were either stolen or destroyed. The construction passed from one organization to another, and each of them rebuilt the building to fit its own needs.
Z 26 года до 93
From 1926 to 1993, 2 floors were built in this temple, and here there was mainly a warehouse of medical equipment for different hospitals that were in Tashkent.
оборудование для разных больниц, которые были в Ташкенте.
In 1976, the dilapidated building was transferred to the Ministry of Culture of the Republic of Uzbekistan. The restored church turned into an organ music hall, and already in 1992, after the country gained independence, the temple was returned to the Catholic parish of Tashkent. In art universities of the capital, they announced a competition for the project of restoration of the church, which began a year later under the leadership of architect Sergei Adamov.
Это нам приходилось путем проведения обмерочных работ.
We had to re-restore the original data by means of measuring work, and a variant of a 3-nave system with the main nave illuminated has already been developed.
Разработан вариант, трехнефной системы с подсветкой главного нефа.
The restorers carried out tremendous work to restore the temple. If the appearance of the building retained the features of the Catholic Church, then inside for almost 70 years, everything has changed beyond recognition.
Очень большую работу проделал младший брат мой.
My younger brother, Herman, did a great job. Herman Adamov. He started with the sketches. The customer liked the sketches, and he started its execution. And a very large amount of work on interior design was carried out by Herman. This is a large part of the sketches on stained glass, the main composition of the altar group, the Ascension of the Christ.
Эскизов по цветным витражам. Главная композиция алтарная группа – это Вознесение Христа.
By the beginning of the second millennium, the restoration of the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart of Jesus was completed, and on October 22, 2000, it was consecrated.
Этот храм, можно бы сказать, открыт для всех людей, и с другой стороны наша.
This temple is open to all people. Our community, on the other hand, is very diverse. Here on Sundays, on holidays, we conduct services in 4 languages. In English, this is mainly for tourists, for diplomats, for businessmen who work here. In Russian, of course, first of all, for the local population. In addition, we have a Korean community, Catholics from South Korea who work here. In addition to this, there are also those who have Polish roots. Therefore, we also celebrate Mass in their native language once a month.
Кроме этого, находятся еще те, которые имеют польские корни, поэтому тоже 1 раз в месяц служим мессу на этом языке.
The main hall of the temple is on the second floor. It is here that Sunday masses are held, accompanied by the magical music of the organ donated by the Bonn parish of St. Paul.
To muzyka jest takim, można by сказать, средством,
Music is an
которое
instrument that unites everyone. We like beauty, we like good music, we feel united.
И тогда мы чувствуем себя одно.
The St. Alexis Cathedral in Samarkand was built just over 100 years ago, in those days when Uzbekistan was part of the Russian Empire. Initially, this magnificent building was conceived as the main Orthodox church of the city, with the aim of holding all the church holidays in it. The foundation stone was laid in 1909, and 3 years later, the temple was consecrated.
Храм интересен тем, что он самый большой в
This
Самарканде.
temple is interesting because it's the largest one at Samarkand. And an interesting point is that this is such a standard construction of regimental churches in the Turkestan military district. Therefore, it's called regimental. The name regimental is explained by the fact that at the beginning of the 20th century, a considerable part of the military contingent was located on the outskirts of the Russian Empire, and for the Orthodox soldiers who were far from their homeland, the Russian authorities developed a special type of the so-called military church. The main emphasis in the project was not on luxury and rich decoration, but on the spaciousness and efficiency of the structure. According to this model, more than 60 temples were built throughout the empire.
С архитектурной точки зрения Алексеевский храм в городе
From an
Самарканд
architectural point of view, the St. Alexis Cathedral in the city of Samarkand, in principle, is no different from the standard buildings of regimental churches, which are numerous in the territory of Uzbekistan and the entire Turkestan territory, including Kazakhstan. There are not many in Tajikistan, in Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and so on. That is, the shape of the temple, it's not a cruciform, not in the shape of a cross. Relatively speaking, it is in the form of a ship. During the construction of churches, local builders were given a certain freedom of action, depending on specific conditions. Therefore, in different cities of the empire, churches could have slight differences from the standard design.
имя
The name
архитектора.
of the architect was lost. In this case, the last name was Smirnov, but he just carried out the work. Well, as you can see, it is built entirely of brick, the so-called Nikolaev brick. In this case, this name, you know how we have the national state standard quality, then at that time, something made of Nikolaev brick, that meant that it is good. The St. Alexis Cathedral was the last Orthodox church erected in Turkestan during the time of the Russian Empire. First, the First World War and then the Revolution changed the course of history.
В 1928 году, то есть
In
после
1928, that is 11 years after the revolution, the October Revolution as we call it now, this temple was closed. Again, it was transferred to the military department. Until 1989, the Turkestan military district was located on this vast territory.
Туркестанский военный округ.
In 1991, the temple building was returned to the Orthodox Church. Of course, the iconostasis of the looted cathedral was not restored. For more than 60 years, the icons were destroyed, stolen, or transferred to other prayer houses and museums, and it acquired this look already in our time.
Профессиональные художники. То есть те люди,
Professional
которые
artists, those people who knew their job, if you see the interior, the same iconostasis of the temple and its painting, all this was done by them in 7-9 years with great success.
там в течение буквально 7-9 лет с большим успехом.
The first liturgy in the restored cathedral was held on February 25, 1992. Today, the Church of St. Alexis lives a full life, and its doors are open for everyone. Buildings associated with various world religions have long become part of Uzbekistan's unique architectural heritage. From time immemorial, the understanding that mutual respect is the basis of consent has been rooted in this country.